Thank you very much, Chris. Chris has been a great help to us. I asked him where he lives because I've seen him in 5 different locations, and he's been a great help to us out here. I went to a Baptist university, so I know a little bit about Baptist University. I was asking one of your professors here, I was like, do they have a curfew? Because when I was in school, we had a curfew, and it was fairly strict. Apparently, your curfew is just you have to sign in. That doesn't sound very strict at all. I think we need to work on a little stricter curfew here, guys. I went to Baylor University for my undergraduate, and then I went to medical school at Duke in North Carolina. And my wife is from Russellville, which is over near Bowling Green, and that's how I got to Kentucky many years ago. I've been married for 19 years. I have 3 children. They're 16, 13, and 10. And I actually had plans to bring one with me tonight, but it's been sort of a crazy day. If anyone tells you that politics or running for office is glamorous, it's not. It's a lie. We thought we had something exciting. We were invited to be on with Judge Napolitano on Fox today. We were heading down, but we were driving down. We actually heard about this at 2 o'clock. So I canceled an hour's worth of patients. We got in the car, we're driving to Nashville because we couldn't get a studio in Bowling Green. Halfway down there, they call us and say there's been a shooting. And I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's apparently been a horrific shooting at a military base in Texas. 11 people are killed and 31 injured. And so it's dominating the news, and so we were canceled. And we'll go again tomorrow, maybe, but that's how it is. We're an hour down there, then we had to drive an hour back to Bowling Green, then we had a 2.5-hour drive here. So we've been kind of racing to get here. I don't do all of this because I, want applause or I want accolades or I want some kind of position in Washington. The reason I do this and I spend the time away from my family and my time out on the road is because I'm truly worried about our country. I think our country is in serious problems. I think we're drowning in a sea of debt and that we need to do something about it. The deficit this year will be $1.75 trillion. It's 13% of the gross national product. We're spending money at 28% of gross national product. These are historic highs, higher than they've ever been since our country began, actually. We are spending money at $53,000 a second. If you look at the debt, the interest on the debt is $30 billion a month. And you might say, oh, that's just a bunch of numbers. What does that mean to me? Well, if you're in college, you're going to get out of college. Your parents eventually want to get rid of you. They want you to be on your own and work for a living. You've got to find a job. And when government is being consumed by this debt, it affects your jobs, it affects business, it affects the whole world. There are 3 ways you can pay for debt. You can tax people, but most of us feel like we're already taxed plenty and don't want more taxes. You can borrow the money, but we've borrowed so much money now that we're at the limit of what we can borrow maybe. We owe $800 billion to the Chinese, $700 billion to the Japanese, $100 billion to the Saudis, $100 billion to the Taiwanese. The list goes on and on. Where we were once a great country that manufactured and exported goods, our #1 export now is debt. If you don't pay for it through taxes or borrowing, you pay for it through monetizing the debt. This means the Federal Reserve simply buys the debt. How do they buy the debt? By making money. They print money. But anybody with half a brain knows that the more money you print, ultimately the existing money becomes worth less. It's sort of like if you can imagine cash for clunkers. Might be good for you. They give you $4,500 and you can get a new car. But there's some bad to it too. Where did the $4,500 come from? They either printed it or borrowed it from somebody. Ultimately, that's bad for you because it puts a damper on the whole economy. It's an illusion. And I think if I told you that, why don't you go out and borrow $1,000 and give it to your kids or give it to your grandkids, everybody would say, well, that's not right. That won't work. It's an illusion. So we get an illusion of wealth by borrowing this money, giving it to people, and all of a sudden the car sales spike and everybody's really happy and thinks, all right, the economy's recovering. Do you really think that's real? When they give you stimulus money, they say, here's $250. And people in Washington say, just go to the mall. Just go to the mall and spend your money and everything will be okay. To me, it is sort of like the latter days of the Roman Empire when there were bread and circuses. The bread and circuses were to distract the mob, to placate the people so you didn't worry about things, that there was no money, and it was happening in Rome at the time, or that they were overextended with their foreign wars. And so bread and circus. Now we have cash for clunkers and stimulus checks. It's the same thing. You're to be distracted, to not see the real problems that we face. Real wealth is created by hard work and savings, but it's not created by the government printing the money up. We are in a serious circumstance. It is very, very serious what's going on. And you'll hear speakers who say, the kids and the grandkids will have to pay for our debt. That's true, but it's also more imminent than that. When they create so much money, that money, when it gets into the system, chases the goods and you will have inflation. In 2008, when we had this great panic, they doubled the monetary base. As the monetary base leaks out of the banks and into the systems, you're going to have significant inflation. When I was a kid, just starting in college, 79, 1980, inflation hit 20%. But we didn't inflate the money supply at the degree that we have done recently. I foresee inflation greater than 1979. Well, people will tell you, and you'll read in the newspaper, it was a liquidity crisis. We were on the brink of disaster. We had to do this. Well, there's a famous economist, Milton Friedman, and a woman who's not quite as famous, but equally as smart, Anna Schwartz. They wrote a book, The Monetary History of the United States, and she was asked about this liquidity crisis. Don't we just have to give the banks money? Nobody's lending money. And she says, it's not a liquidity crisis, it's a crisis of confidence. People won't loan money because they're worried about the asset sheets of these companies. AIG, you've heard of, the insurance company, was a huge, hundreds of billion-dollar company, but they started investing in derivatives of mortgages, sort of extensions or insurance products on top of mortgages. It got out of control. But as they did, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Then we said, oh, they're too big to fail. And so we bailed them out. It's not the way the marketplace should work. The marketplace, bankruptcy is never fun, but bankruptcy liquidates that debt, allows us to get started again. In my community, Fruit of the Loom went bankrupt a few years ago, and it wasn't a happy time. People lost their jobs, but they downsized and were bought by Warren Buffett. Same would have happened to AIG. Same would have happened to all these companies, but instead, they stick us with the bill. AIG's gotten $180 billion, and they gave their executives $1 million bonuses. One guy thinks up for $100 billion bonuses from one of these companies. This is the kind of games they're playing, and they try to convince us on Main Street that it's good for us to help out Wall Street. We have to look fundamentally at why we have these problems. Why did we get a housing bubble? We got a housing bubble because the Federal Reserve set the interest rates in 2001 at 0%. I tell people that interest rates should be like insulin. If you eat a big meal, your insulin rises to correct your blood sugar, and you have what we call in medicine homeostasis. It's a maintaining value. But interest rates are a key thing in the marketplace that help to dictate and help to tamponade out the effect of the rising and falling cycles within the economy. But if you don't let interest rates rise, and the Federal Reserve says, let's just keep them at zero, what happens is you get an over-exuberance. Everybody can buy a house. And then you have the government on top of that said, well, this person never gets to buy a house. He doesn't have a down payment. Let's start giving people houses and tell the banks to loan them money even though they have no down payment. And it worked for quite a while. It worked for maybe 5 or 10 years because the price of homes was going up like this. From the Great Depression on, the price of homes was rising until 2006, 2007. It turned a corner that no one predicted, or very few people predicted.